In rugby league, I had a problem. In my final year, when I was playing a New South Wales Cup, I had been taken down from first grade preseason all the way down to Ron Massey, which is 3 divisions, essentially. Because you have first grade, then you have New South Wales Cup, then you have Ron Massey. And I was sitting there thinking, how the fuck has this happened? I was in the top division, now I'm in 3rd division. This doesn't make any sense. I should be at least in 2nd. Because there were guys who were ahead of me in the 2nd division team that did not do the NRL preseason. I was like, this is very strange. And then there were a lot of people in the team who weren't taking it seriously for whatever reason. They go on benders on the Saturday and then come and play on the Sunday. And that started to piss me off as well. And I was like, if I'm putting in all this effort and the rewards of that effort could be destroyed by the efforts of another person.
Yeah, it gets diluted in a team
even
sport.
though we're a cohesive team, but we're not, then it started to really edge away at me. And I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't fucking like this anymore. I like being part of a team. I like being part of a team environment. I like working towards a common goal. I think that's how you do anything well, is when a team comes together to surround one single target. Then I thought, fuck, I really don't like this aspect of competition. I don't like being reliant on other people. So then when I moved into the sport of jiu-jitsu, you still get the team environment with your training, but then it's sole competition. And I was like, this is cool, because whether I win or lose is up to me.
Yeah,
It's completely my fault. And I love taking responsibility for that sort of stuff.
Hey, it's Julian from Loan Options. Today I'm here with a special guest and the heavyweight subversion champion. I'll let him introduce himself. Here he is.
Yeah, so it's one of my many accolades. People hate when you talk about shit that you've done, but it's the facts. So my name's Josh Saunders. I'm a jiu-jitsu brown belt, kind of infamous, famous-ish for achieving that in such a short period of time. It's a little bit facetious to think that it was only that 23 months period that allowed for that to happen. I've got a storied background in many different professional sports. I was a little known fact, I don't think I've told this very often, but I was almost selected into the first GWS Giants team for AFL at 16. And the only reason I didn't make it was because I literally didn't know the rules. That was the only thing. They thought I would be an obvious liability because I didn't know the tactics of the game. And I only started playing the sport in year 10 because my PE teacher, Mr. Muri, said to me, he goes, do you want another day off during the week? Because you're already playing union on a Tuesday and league on a Thursday. AFL's on Wednesdays. And I'm like, yeah, obviously. So I picked up AFL and I was actually pretty good at it. So my main career before that was rugby league. I started playing at 4 or 5 and ended up retiring at 21. Went all the way through SG Baller under 18s, under 20s, both years at Souths, and then a first grade preseason with the Raiders. And then eventually played New South Wales Cup and retired not too long after that. Did 2 years of absolutely nothing to do with competitive sport, and then found jiu-jitsu in a garage session during the first lockdown, where everyone was locked down, with my best mate, Zach. And he said to me, he goes, do you want to come do some karate in the garage? So I said, yes.
Karate.
Yeah, like stepbrothers. Because we were already best friends. So we didn't have to have the, did we just become best friends? We were already there. And it was him, myself, James and Connor. All 3 of them had been training between 3 to 6 months each as white belts. I was the biggest, fastest, strongest, only former professional athlete in the room, and ended up doing really well in this little makeshift garage on puzzle mats in Marsden Park. And
There's so many stories of that. I did a couple of garage sessions in jiu-jitsu. What a time that was.
They're the best. They're the best. But at the time, I was working as a personal trainer, and so I was doing gym sessions out of my garage. And then just training in the gym, lifting weights for like 2-3 hours a day because I was bored. And that was about it. So that was a welcome change of pace. And then I think about 6 weeks later, when that finally wrapped up, I ended up getting my license back, rang the coach of the gym that they were all training at, said, I'm coming in. And he goes, oh, I've heard so much about you, blah, blah, blah. And haven't had more than 2 or 3 sessions off in the last just under 4 years.
Yeah, wow. That's crazy. And so you go in, and people that haven't trained jiu-jitsu don't understand just how addictive it is. It almost just is overwhelming. You just can't. All you think about is like different moves, and then you go down the YouTube rabbit hole, and then you go down and buying all the Danaher leg lock, all the DVDs and stuff, and the online videos and tutorials. But it is like, especially if you've got one of those personalities where you're all in for something. And so can you explain that compared to sort of rugby league, compared to some of the other sports you played, union and AFL, like what was it like when you first started training and then you turn up at a gym, and then just like, what was that process any different to turning up to a normal training session with a team sport?
It's a good question. I think the competitive nature was always there from my behalf. You're rocking up to preseason. I remember there was a kid from, I call him a kid, but he's 6'8", 160 kilos. His name's Jordan Mailata. He came from South's.
Yeah, he's in the NFL now.
Under 20s. He went to the NFL, plays for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I remember walking into my first day of season 2 for under 20s. And here is this mountainous man. And I'm looking at him. I was like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, where did they get this kid from? Started talking to him. He was a really lovely guy. But we're doing a preseason meeting in the team room at Redfern. And I'm thinking, I'm going to have to smash this guy at training because he's big. He's coming from my spot. And immediately it was that like fire switch. Yeah. And I'm like, I can be friends with him, but I'm also understanding that he's gunning for my spot. And I didn't play last year not to play this year and not make this team. And I was only one of 4 people selected from North Sydney Bears SG Ball. I was the only kid to make the team from that pathway in the last 3 years. 3 years prior was the last guy to do that. So I came from a very, very, very small pool. And I was like, I'm not about to let this new kid just fucking walk all over my spot. I don't care how big you are. And we ended up having a wrestling session at Maroubra Beach where I let him know pretty much that he was not taking my spot. Poor guy. He came in very unfit, had been coming off the couch essentially. The dogs let him go because he has a heart condition. And they basically told him, look, we have no place for you because you're too big and we can't get you down to weight and blah, blah, blah. And Souths gave him a second chance, which ended up being his opportunity to go over the NFL, which is a really cool story of perseverance and resilience and all that sort of. He's a lovely, lovely, lovely guy. But I kind of had that same, I guess, hunger of stoking the fire when I went into jiu-jitsu. It wasn't necessarily that I knew that I was going to be good at it. I had no idea where it was going to lead me. I had no idea I was going to be doing it full time less than 2 years later. I had no idea I was going to be facing world champions less than 2 years later or winning trials or doing any of that sort of stuff. I had no idea it was going to go anywhere. But I knew that it was entertaining and interesting enough for me that I wanted to pursue it. And that was pretty much it. So you stoke that with a little bit of competitive fire, and it's a good mix.
And so you spoke about, coach said he'd heard so much about you from these garage sessions, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But you're talking about Luke?
No, I was at a previous gym beforehand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Gaylor Brothers in Borkham Hills.
Okay.
So that just by happenstance, the boys that were living together at different times, all 3 of them had been living with each other in pairs at the one place in Borkham Hills, which was a 50-meter walk to the jiu-jitsu gym. And they had just decided that they wanted to start it because we're all into the UFC. We watch MMA. We weren't really doing a whole lot. So they had decided to start. And we did the garage session, and they were telling Seb, they're like, man, we got to get this guy in here because he's going to be a fucking problem if we can teach him some stuff. Because I just bear hugged everyone and held everyone down. I didn't know what to do. And because of my league background, we did a fair bit of wrestling. Not technical wrestling, but it was like pummeling, making sure you can have the ball held.
Position.
Yeah.
I see it because you get exposed to it. Like I trained a little bit at Gracie and Smith and Grange, and they've over the years had different. They've had the Panthers. They've had the.
That's where Souths used to go.
Souths used to, yeah, and Alex, the head coach there, Robert Whitaker's head coach. He's got a pretty good record of teaching, and his squad obviously very good at teaching the NRL teams the small things. You know, the importance of underhooks, different positions, turning the body to face the opposite direction, so slow the ball down, all that. It's like, and I think probably Melbourne Storm maybe popularized it a little bit more than the other teams, but everyone else has jumped onto it, and now that they look after the Bulldogs, their gym. But so you just see the type of things they do, and you understand the importance of it positionally, but also to make more effective tackles as well. You know, there's certain groups that you can have that mean that you can hold on a little tighter or control the body or the torso.
Or use less energy.
Yeah, that too, actually.
Which is critical. Efficiency is one of the things that people don't think about. And when I get beginners, we got this kid at my gym now. He's diabetic, so we call him type 1. Just as a shits and giggles name. And he's strong as fuck, this kid. He's built like a Mr. Olympia athlete. Just unbelievable muscle belly. It's probably because of the insulin.
Yeah.
And just looks like a brick shit house. But he exhausts himself by trying to use muscle in every single element of technique. So I just wait, float on top of him, make a very slight and distinct movements. And then by the end of the round, he can barely walk. And I've exerted almost zero energy.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize, it's like they say runners can't swim and swimmers can't run. But grappling is a different
But
type
neither of them can do jiu-jitsu.
Neither of them can do wrestling or jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's insane. The first jiu-jitsu session I went in, I didn't finish it. I was out the window, like almost thrown up.
Way.
Like I wasn't. Yeah, I didn't. It was a hard session.
That's great
for someone who was out of shape and I had some previous knee problems and stuff like that. And this was like, all right, I'm finally getting back into it. I couldn't really run. I still can't really run on concrete. It becomes really painful, but. I thought jiu-jitsu is the way, like I'm going to be able to get in good shape. I couldn't finish the first session. It was, big warm up, and then you sort of get into the drills you sort of find there. But then when you start like rolling, and usually a lot of gyms, especially if they're sort of not just competition gyms, they'll do like positional rounds. Positional rounds is enough to sort of get the heart racing because you're competing and you're not very efficient with your movements when you first start. But then when you start sparring, it's like, I don't want this guy to choke me.
Yeah.
I don't want to tap. I don't want to, and it's just like you're exerting so much energy to just survive, basically. But yeah, so you obviously have, you went from a white belt, no experience, to a brown belt. And even, saying that you're a brown belt is a little misleading because you're competing against some of the best black belts in the country, and even outside of the country. So how does someone get that level of progress? Like, talk about how much work you're putting in. Talk about your sort of your schedule. Like this, to get a blue belt in 2 years is considered pretty fast. Like if it's a legit gym that's actually making sure that you're a blue belt. Yeah. 2 years is it's not super fast, but I know a lot of like really good people that have got it in a year, 14 months, 15 months, but 2 years is about the normal.
Pretty much, that's average.
Yeah.
4 sessions a week. Maybe if they're lucky, they show up to an open mat on the Saturday. Probably scheduled to get it at about 2 years. 2 years. Maybe 18 months to 2 years, depending on the gym.
For sure. And if they're competing a lot, that will speed it up.
There's so much variation.
There is.
Yeah. There's no set cookie cutter criteria.
Yeah. It's really meant to be about competence.
Pretty much.
And then, of course, then there's purple, then there's brown, and then there's black. And so you go through this process, and it's like, as far as I'm aware, one of the fastest rises. Talk about that. You must have got addicted, or you must have found this passion for it, where you just like let it consume you and almost just go along for the ride. Like, talk about that.
Initially at white belt, it wasn't a lot of that really. I just wanted to hang out with my mates after work, after personal training, massive days doing that, and it was just a little bit of fun between some mates of mine that I hadn't really got to spend a lot of time with, just because their careers were over here, my careers were over here. So it's a nice reintegration back into that team environment that I really enjoyed. Plus, I love training, I love lifting weights, and this was a new challenge that was completely perplexing. It was something I was 100% foreign to. And I was like, it's kind of weird, but I like it. I remember going to my very first session, we were doing like the bowing in and stuff. I was like, what the fuck is this all about? It just took me back a little bit. I've never been in one of those environments ever. And
There's a fair bit of tradition in there, right?
yeah,
Like,
well, depending on what gym you go to. Luke doesn't really hold a lot of that have to bow to Helio sort of stuff around our sort of gym. It's very much skill acquisition, and we're here to be good competitors, or we're here to be proficient at the sport. Whether you compete or not, that's completely up to the individual. But yeah, throughout white belt, I really just enjoyed it. I looked at it for something that I could do, that I could enjoy, that was a new pursuit that would be challenging for some reason. And then I competed. And then I won. I went triple gold. I went 80% submissions. I had 2 points scored on me. And that was enough. That was where the fish hook came in.
Yeah, okay.
I was like, this is fucking sick.
Yeah.
Because in rugby league, I had a problem. In my final year, when I was playing a New South Wales Cup, I had been taken down from first grade preseason all the way down to Ron Massey, which is 3 divisions, essentially. Because you have first grade, then you have New South Wales Cup, then you have Ron Massey. And I was sitting there thinking, how the fuck has this happened? I was in the top division, now I'm in 3rd division. This doesn't make any sense. I should be at least in 2nd. Because there were guys who were ahead of me in the 2nd division team that did not do the NRL preseason. I was like, this is very strange. And then there were a lot of people in the team who weren't taking it seriously for whatever reason. They go on benders on the Saturday and they come and play on the Sunday. And that started to piss me off as well. And I was like, if I'm putting in all this effort and the rewards of that effort could be destroyed by the efforts of another person.
Yeah, it gets diluted in a team
Even
sport.
though we're a cohesive team, but we're not, then it started to really edge away at me. And I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't fucking like this anymore. I like being part of a team. I like being part of a team environment. I like working towards a common goal. I think that's how you do anything well, is when a team comes together to surround one single target. Then I thought, fuck, I really don't like this aspect of competition. I don't like being reliant on other people. So then when I moved into the sport of jiu-jitsu, you still get the team environment with your training, but then it's sole competition. And I was like, this is cool, because whether I win or lose is up to me.
Yeah.
It's completely my fault. And I love taking responsibility for that sort of stuff. Like if anything goes wrong, like if it starts raining outside when I leave here, it's my fault that I didn't bring an umbrella. If I get wet.
Extreme ownership.
Yeah.
Jocko Willink, love
Yeah,
that.
and I started to build into that right around the time that this jiu-jitsu thing was coming into my life as an opportunity. And I was like, fuck, what a perfect way to test this as a theory. And I haven't lost many times because of it.
Yeah, well, I remember seeing, I've been to like all the subversions, since COVID, obviously did the live stream in COVID, and then they started doing the events at the Roundhouse. And if people haven't seen those events or haven't watched them, like I think there's some content on our Instagram, but go to the subversion page and take a look. My opinion is it's the best production on a jiu-jitsu event I've ever seen in Australia. Mm-hmm. I would say some of the productions in the US, I would say it's better than those two. And I think it's an opportunity for, there's a huge opportunity for growth in the sport, in that sport. And one of the reasons is for some people, MMA is a little too gruesome,
Yeah.
the elbows, the blood, all that. Jiu-jitsu is, they call it the gentle art. It's not really that gentle, especially if you've watched, like 2 real guns go at it. But there's a level of, it's like a physical chess match. There's an element of like your intellect that's engaged. It's not just pure violence. There's no striking, but there's really high level grappling. There's grips that, if you use the wrong grip, they can escape. There's so many moving parts, and put that together with a really good production, and the floor and the stage is elevated, and then you've got good atmosphere with DJ and lighting and bar food and drinks, and like it ends up being just like this really good event, really cool event. And then you've got the best competitors in the country getting to display their skills, and obviously like George and Matt and the guys that put it all together, they do a really good job, and recently started putting on belts on the line and stuff, and it's just added to the dynamic of it. So I'm watching this, and then I think at the time when you might have been still blue.
Yeah, I was a blue belt.
Yeah,
I got my purple belt that Monday.
Okay,
because of this.
Yeah, so I remember watching the first time, and it was like you come up against another big guy, and we're like, all right, here we go.
He was 135, 138. I was 124, 122.
Yeah. I mean, it was the thuds on the the mat.
The quarter ton match it was
It
heralded
was
as.
a quarter ton.
Matty Morris came up with that. It was good.
It was just insane. It was insane. And I can't remember what belt he was, but he was
purple.
Purple, yeah. Massive dude. And there was a lot of hype. There was a lot of whispers about yourself saying, you know, like, this guy's a blue belt. He's a freak, you know. And then since then, I've sort of been very intrigued, you know, because you just watch someone like just go through all the best people, and then, you know, ADCC, which is, you know, the most, I guess, one of the most prestigious, you know, competitions you can qualify for. And so now, in terms of who you're going to be competing against in the world, potentially, you're going to be talking about like all the best people in the heaviest divisions, like Gordon Ryan's of the world, and, you know, I mean, it's just insane. We've got one of our own, you know, and it's like you see like guys like Craig Jones that sort of make it into that space. Obviously he's a smaller guy, but it's so good to see Aussies actually getting recognition on the world stage now for jiu-jitsu. And we have some great coaches, like Luke's obviously one of them, and we could probably delve into a little bit about what impact he's had. But there's something, I feel like there's something really cool happening right now in the Australian jiu-jitsu scene, and probably over the next few years we're going to see a few more people start to, you know, I guess put their name out there and make a bit of a name for themselves on the scene. I mean, you went ADCC, like nobody touched you. I don't think anybody so much as scored a point. You dominated every match.
No
like,
points.
Yeah. And so for me, it's like, I can't wait to see how this plays out. And there's so much cool stuff happening at the moment. But so you got hooked from the competition, and then what does it look like from there? How do you go from your first competition to basically competing almost every opportunity?
Yeah, pretty much. So that was about 8 or 9 weeks into training. And I get this conversation happen all the time. They're like, oh, when am I ready to compete?
Yeah.
And they think, oh, I've been training for a year. Maybe I'm ready to dip my toes in and all that sort of stuff. And I watched this Joey Diaz clip yesterday, maybe last night. And he was saying he has this conversation all the time. They're like, man, I'm going to start comedy, but I'm going to move to LA in 14 months. I'm finally doing it. And I'm going to save up $800 a month and I'm going to finally make the big jump. And he goes, I always take them with zero seriousness, because if you were serious about it, you'd do it. You wouldn't wait. What the fuck is going to happen in 14 months? What's going to change? What's going to change? Life happens. Shit happens. Your dog dies. Your missus leaves you. There goes LA. There it goes. It's gone. And I didn't want that to happen with this opportunity. So I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to dive head in. As soon as I had that first competition, I'm like, yeah, this is it. I've made the decision now, and I'm just going to compete. And I competed 3 weeks later, same thing, double gold, all submissions. And then I competed like 5 weeks after that, same thing, double gold, all submissions. And I was like, this is fucking hectic. I'm just going to keep spinning this wheel until I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it was always that unique childlike wonderment, which I try and coach people on a mindset behavioral thing, is that throughout our scholastic experience, we get told, pay attention, don't look out the window, don't daydream, don't do these things. And we lose this element of boredom curating an imaginative process for us, where we think about what life would be like if we were doing X, Y, Z. Usually with kids, it's stupid stuff like, oh, what if I was an astronaut? Or what if I went to Saturn? Or what if my mum was 7 foot tall? It's all crazy stuff. But for us, when we get older, we kind of lose that innate ability to be able to do that.
And it's linked to visualization, right?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
like trying to manifest things. Like I'm visualizing, you know, becoming a world champion, visualizing becoming the best.
Correct.
In the top 0.1% of my whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's finance or jiu-jitsu or whatever, right? If you lose the ability to be a little bit of a dreamer, then, you know, you're inhibiting your ability to imagine what that would be like. And when you can imagine what that would be like, then you can start to build a roadmap.
You can fulfill it.
Yeah, of like, how do I get from where I am right now to where I want to be? And that could be, you know, the heavyweight champion, or that could be, you know, maybe it's not going to be a professional sport for you the way that it is for some people, it's not going to be a professional sport. But maybe they want to be a serious competitor. Maybe they want to be, they want to win gold. They want to win whatever it is,
Maybe you're that one tough guy at the gym that people don't want to fucking roll.
Yeah.
That's it. Maybe you're the tough guy.
Yeah.
Maybe you're the guy who's in their 40s, they're a purple belt, they've been training for 10 years, and you want to be the dude that's avoided. That's as simple as it gets. You don't have to want crazy aspirations or anything like that. And I'd be lying if I said that I knew any of this was going to happen at that stage of my career when I was doing white belt competitions. And I went 0 to 7 months blue belt. And then
that is so crazy. I can't tell people how crazy that is.
I went undefeated. Crazy. I think I was like 22-0, and I didn't submit 2 people, which was in my first competition. Yeah. Everybody else since then I submitted. Not one match went the distance, aside from those 2 first matches. And then I went to blue belt, and my coach at the time, Severino, another mate of mine, Dylan, he was competing alongside me. My best mate, unfortunately, dislocated his shoulder, so he was on the sidelines for a couple of weeks. The other guy, Connor, that I started with, is enlisted in the army, so he was doing other bits and pieces, wasn't really taking it that seriously. And so me and Dylan were tearing up the competition scene in our respective weight classes. So Severino went, fuck, this is good marketing. Let's get in on this. I'm going to pay for you boys to go to Brisbane. I'm going to pay for you guys to go to Melbourne. And we're going to put Gaylord Brothers Sydney on the map, essentially, because we were the only franchise in Sydney. There was 3 or 4 in Queensland. Fabio, he's originally from Brazil, then moved up to Queensland. And he just wanted to let us run wild. So we went to Brisbane, fucking smashed everybody. Went to Melbourne, and I came up against this big Islander guy. And I forget his name. I should remember his name. He was the first guy to beat me. And the reason that happened is because I wasn't well enough acquainted with the rules in the IBJJF style format. I wasn't well acquainted with the rules whatsoever. Yeah, all I knew was look you in the face, submit you 2 seconds later. That's all I knew. I didn't need to worry about points.
And it is confusing. The rule sets, it's hard to kind of explain in this kind of thing. But, IBJJF is like a very traditional point system, very conservative rule set. The refs are sort of wearing suits and ties, and it's hard to explain.
It's like league and union. It looks the same. They play with a very similar ball. They play with a similar field, but there's completely different rules. So ADCC rules compared to IBJJF, to make it really simple for people, is like tennis versus table tennis. It looks the same. It's scaled different, but then it's completely revelatory in the experiences. So I didn't know the rules that if you took them down and you went outside the barrier and they said stop, that the takedown didn't count. So I ended up taking this guy down 2 or 3 times, but the points weren't awarded to me. So then I went, I wasn't watching the clock, because I refuse to watch the clock when I compete, because it takes you out of your state that you're meant to be in. And I went and attempted a takedown, and he counter took down me. And I was only just started training at Sydney West, where Luke said to me, he goes, no, you got to be good off your back, because if you get put there, you don't know what to do. You'll be a fish out of water. Guess what happened? I was a fish out of water on my fucking back. And I'd never been there before, let alone in a competition. So I kind of shit the bed a little bit, but what a perfect lesson in tactics, but also making sure that you're extremely well-rounded. So probably the reason I was able to do this was because I'd had so many fuck-ups in rugby league. There's uncounted missed tackles, uncounted drop balls, uncounted losses over a 17-year career, that you learn to internalize those things, but you don't let them drag on. So you go, okay, I made an error.
Yeah, move on.
Now I'm going to move on, because job's not done.
Yeah.
Correct. Because if you're worrying about the tackle you missed 7 minutes ago, you are guaranteed to make another one. You're guaranteed to miss another one, because you're in the past. And if you're in the past, you're not present. If you're not present, you're not seeing the lay of the land where the field is. You're not looking at their feet. You're looking at the ball. And if you're looking at the ball, you'll get distracted every single time.
Great example of that is last year's NRL Grand Final. Currently, I don't even remember exactly, but clearly screwed something up. Might have missed a tackle, made a bad call, something. And then he just, instead of dwelling on it, just went on this 20-minute tear and absolutely picked apart the Broncos, and literally brought the team back from the brink, into winning the Grand Final.
Yeah.
And, that is, I think all the best people, all the champions, all the people with the real winner mindset are the people that are able to do that. That's so hard to do, not dwell on it.
Yeah.
Move on. All right, can't change that. That's happened. what I can change is the next step that I put forward, you know?
There's an interesting tact on that I also use as well, is that not only do you not let it affect you, you allow it to motivate you as fuel, as an internalized mechanism. So there's a famous back and forth between Spike Lee. I don't know what he's famous for. I have no idea, but he's one of the biggest New York Knicks fans on earth. And Reggie Miller was a basketball player for the Pacers, I think. And back in the 90s, they were always coming up against New York in the finals, always in the playoffs. And Reggie Miller would be very, very good, but he would be even better when Spike Lee was talking shit, because he was use the distraction as an internal motivator. He goes, oh, okay, you think your shit talking's working? All right, instead of dropping 30, I'm going to drop 50.
Yeah.
And Michael Jordan, the same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
People would always be cognizant of talking shit back to Mike. You hear rookies coming into the league all the time, and they'd be like, why do they call this guy Black Jesus? Come on. What are we talking about here? And then they'd talk shit to him, and he goes, okay, that's how you want to play, huh? That's how you want to play it? And then he'd drop 50 on you and then remember it for next time as well. No. So then they'd come back around, because the NBA season's 82 games, come back around in the season, and then he'd do it again. And then he'd slap you on the ass at the end of a game. He goes, you remember that for next time.
Yeah.
You don't ever challenge the king. So the best athletes aren't even the ones that can block that out. It's the ones that use it as an internal mechanism for fuel. And it's the same thing within business, within life, within everything. I think that's the way that you tell yourself the story in terms of like a psychological perspective. Yeah. So this thing happens, it's outside of your control, and it's a mistake or a failure or something of that regard. And you think, how cool is the story going to be when I overcome this? Not even in the future, but in real time. Like I make a horrendous mistake on the field, and then, like you said, what Nathan Cleary would have done, 20 minutes later, bring it back from the brink.
Yeah.
That's very impressive to do.
It's almost unfathomable for some people to like, because you just see people make mistakes all the time, right? And you just see them like sort of down in the dumps or whatever. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, they made a bad call in the business or, you know, whatever it is.
They drop a coffee cup and their head explodes.
Yeah. Sometimes people are like this close, from just completely losing it. And a small thing could get them. It's just like the straw that broke the camel's back. But
dog chews up a pillow and they lose it.
Yeah, it's just they're that close. That close, and there's obviously a lot of stresses these days in society. A lot of people struggling out there and all that kind of stuff. But it's the way you deal with it for sure. And you can look at it two ways, and it doesn't matter if you're spiritual or religious or otherwise, right? It's a mindset thing, and the mindset thing is. It's like that win or learn thing, right? It's like I will either be given, I'll either be triumphant or I'll be given the lessons, right, that are going to help me become triumphant later on. So, you said before that it was a psychological thing. I 100% believe that. I think you see people, especially sports that are big on momentum, golf or some of these sports are more psychological than they are physical. Like, the level of athlete required so let's say an Olympic sprinter versus, and with the greatest of respect, of course, because all athletes are in their own right, deserve the respect. But like say a golfer, like you see John Daly, turns up, cigarette in his mouth, drinking Diet Coke, doesn't warm up, big belly, turns it, smashes it, right? Like, but sometimes with momentum, like there's actually a psychological and a physical aspect to momentum. One is when you do get some wins, you actually get a boost of testosterone and you get a boost of dopamine, and that enables you to create this sort of upward spiral where you start winning more and more, and your confidence gains. And when your confidence gains, you get more of a testosterone boost and all these kinds of things. And then the inverse is also true. So if you start losing, you got to figure out a way to stop that rot straight away. And you see some people go into a hole, like their career is going so well, and then they have this adversity, and then you just almost never see them again, or you never see the real version of them, or the version of them that you were sort of accustomed to seeing. Has there ever been a time in your career, whether it's jiu-jitsu or prior to that, where you thought, there's no way I can come back from this, or anything like that where you've thought maybe this is not for me, or like, has there ever been something that's ate away at you like that?
Nah, I don't think like that.
Yeah,
Nah.
it's good. It's good if you.
I mean, I got to a stage in rugby league where I was like, am I going to be doing this for the next 5 years? And then I had to make an educated decision based on what I wanted out of life. And I refused to see that as a failure because it was a pivot into something else, which I'm doing now, which is infinitely better.
Yeah.
And I don't ever have thoughts of that nature where like, fuck, am I going to tap out from this? It's either, like you were saying, you win or you learn. But psychologically, it's what am I going to continue to strive for irrespective of this? Like what we were talking about before the episode, it's working on your business, working in your business. There's functional elements that have to be nitty gritty and mundane, and other bits and pieces are very tangible, very logical. But then there's the cultured aspect of the vision and the cult and all those bits and pieces that are complicit within the structure. And it's the same thing within your existence. It's like, what am I actually wanting to do here? I've only got 70 to 90 years if I'm lucky. What am I going to have that's above myself? So not necessarily like my endeavors or my achievements or my successes or anything like that. Like, what am I really aiming for?
Yeah, and what do you leave behind, whether it's legacy or,
something of that
above
nature.
Yourself. Yeah.
Exactly, something of that nature, right? And I think about that a lot. And even at the stage of my rugby league career, was very, very poignant inside my own head. Is like, I want to make people think that they can achieve more than they currently do. That's it. It's a very simple.
Amazing, yeah.
It's extremely profound, but it's very simple on the surface. And probably one of the reasons why I'm at where I am currently, in terms of like the mindset stuff that I post, or in terms of the jiu-jitsu career or anything like that, is a result of that. Because nobody expected, including me. I was a spectator to this journey also. I had no idea I was going to end up in the place. And I really like this point from Simon Sinek, that everybody's boastful about the achievements and multiple time trials winner, all that sort of stuff, brown belt, blah, blah, blah. Tip of the iceberg. You're only seeing the touch, because
the process is
no, the rewards, the current level of attainment of rewards is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole iceberg coming up from underneath that I haven't even seen yet. But it's the continuation of charging forwards with such veracity and such purpose and such power, that no matter what you've already attained, it's only ever going to be the tip of the iceberg. And from 5 years ago, it'll have uncovered a lot of it. But continually moving forwards, it's like, nah, what else can I really do?
Yeah.
What else, if this right here, right now, is currently just this, what else is awaiting? And we'll talk about that in terms of an imaginative process. What if? Let that question run wild in your brain.
It is great. I do like the imagine if, what if questions.
Instead of what if it's the worst thing that could have happened, what if it's better than I could have imagined?
Yeah.
What would that look like?
Profound, yeah.
What would it look like? What would it touch like? What would it taste like? What would it smell like? What would it feel like? Originally for me in business, one of the main things that I wanted to achieve was going to a restaurant and not giving a fuck about what the bill was. That was one of the main things. I really wanted to go out because I had that experience, and I wasn't able to deliver that experience to people around me, like my dad and my family, my brother and my sister, my girlfriend at the time. And I went on a dinner. I went to a dinner to Rockpool in the city, and a client of mine's best friend invited us to go. Super wealthy guy. Sells model trains for a living, which is fucking ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. Yeah. And the things that he told, how many units he told me he sold in COVID would disgust you. And it's not my story, obviously. But he took us out to Rockpool, and the dinner was like $1,800 for 4 people. And it blew my mind, because at the time, that was more than I was earning a week. And I'm like, what the fuck? We just spent that on dinner? And for him, it was... didn't give a shit. And I was like, fuck, what must that be like? What must that be like? And then I thought about it in terms of a characterization switch. What if I was him and he was me? And I was able to deliver that experience to people that couldn't deliver it to themselves. Because until then, I hadn't really eaten at like a fancy place. And it wouldn't mean much to the observer who was there that night. I was like, fuck, this is a really cool experience. And I really enjoy this sort of stuff. And since then, 2-3 years after that, I now do have that ability.
Yeah, that's great.
That's just from a what
it's
if.
funny because I had a similar thing. It was like I always thought in my head it'd be nice to be able to just tap my card and not have to think about what the balance is. Yeah, never have to worry about is there enough money in there.
Yeah,
and that was honestly one of my earliest financial goals. Is like never have to think whether or not I need to buy that item. If it comes across like that shirt's nice, I'm going to buy that shirt. I don't have to check my bank account.
Yeah.
Those sneakers are nice. I want to buy those sneakers, or I want to buy those sneakers for someone, my brother, my sister, my now wife.
Just because,
for no reason. I want to be able to tap my card and not have to check, if I got enough money for it. And, it enables you because it's not all about the material things, but I don't spend money on a lot of things. I love cars. I love food. And I don't really have any bad habits. I don't, do other things. So really, I like to spoil my family. I got 2 kids. I like to spoil my kids and my team members in my business. I like to look after everybody in the business.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the most important thing. I don't really care myself. I don't care about the designer stuff. I don't care too much for that stuff.
Yeah.
It's nice to have, don't get me wrong, but I don't really build my whole personality on it. I'm not dressed head to toe in it. I wear decent clothes and decent sneakers and decent shoes and decent middle of the road stuff. I don't kind of go too crazy. But for me, it's about how are the people around me feeling? When they're with me, do they feel like I'm taking care of them? Do they feel like they feel like I'm going to look after them? And that gives them a security blanket, right?
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I know that this is a good person who's going to take care of me and going to stick by me and has my back. And there's a thing that I posted on my story about Dana White, threatening to resign when they were trying to cancel Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Over he was talking about rap music and he said the N-word and it's it was the craziest thing for me to see because there's such a small amount of people that would demonstrate that level of loyalty, and it's not anything that can be bought, but that's taken years and years and years of them trusting each other, of them looking after each other, watching each other's backs, all that kind of stuff to get to that point.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that not the money side of it, but just the gestures, the random acts of kindness, the being thoughtful and being in a position. Here's the best way I can describe it is being in a position financially so that you can be thoughtful. And I'm not saying buy roses every single day, but if you don't have the money, it's really hard to be thoughtful. I mean, you can write a note on a piece of paper, but there's more to it than that. So, it's interesting that that's such a beautiful thing, I guess, to aspire to is not necessarily think about, I want $1 million in the bank account, but I want to be able to go to a restaurant and not care about what the bill is.
Because the thing is, directly to that point, if you want $1 million, you can have it, but then what?
Yeah, that's right.
Then what?
Yeah.
Because the million will come and go because you didn't set up the afterthought. But if you have this internal flame, this fire to be stoked consistently of, I want to make sure people around me do better. That's it. Then it's an unfulfillable, unattainable goal. What's the metric?
Yeah.
How do you measure it?
Yeah.
You only measure it through experiences. How do you gain experiences? You continue to do it every single fucking day and it's never over. And people get caught up in this a lot and they think, I don't have purpose. I don't have passion. I don't have a meaning or goal for my life. And really it's best served when you think about it in terms of an infinite game, not in terms of a finite game. So $1 million earning that is a finite game. Once you get there, you'll probably stop whatever fulfilled you getting to that goal. The infinite game is, I want to continue my business as long as humanly possible.
Yeah.
That's the infinite game. Then you'll go through the ups and downs, but it won't be as crippling because as soon as you're approaching the $1 million, then you get a $200,000 tax bill. You're like, fuck, I was so close. And I'm so far away. That could destroy some people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really could. And it could destroy your psyche from ever wanting to attain that goal anyway. It probably should because it's a fickle, very low level, very tangible goal. Whereas I want to be the best father that I can be, is a somewhat intangible goal because you have to commit to it every single day. Because what you do as a father now, how old are your kids?
5 and 3. Yeah.
So right now it's in the R&D phase. It's in the learning and development phase. Yeah. And in 10 to 15 years, not to make you feel old, but in 10 to 15 years, it'll be a completely different revolution of being an experience of a father because they'll be teenagers.
Yeah.
And then in another 10 to 15 years, they'll be coming to dad for life advice about
grandkids. And
exactly right, about finances and other bits and pieces. You don't really you've got that knowledge stored away in the breast pocket to be able to unleash onto them when they're old enough, but you don't have that capability yet. So that's a really cool way to think about it. Like, what's my goal going to look like in 10 years? Because if it is this overarching theme of I want to be the best dad ever, at least to my kids, not to anybody else's kids, because it's immeasurable. So it's an infinite game. Because even on your deathbed, you'll still be being that best dad ever.
You'll still be trying to. Yeah.
Exactly. You'll still be holding it down for the fort. They're going to be crying and all this sort of stuff. But you're like, no, it's good. Like I set you guys up really well and I lived a really good life as a result of you guys being a part of it. And then I fulfilled this dream. And I think thinking about death is quite interesting because you only fear it when you don't really go into it all that much. There's nothing that really terrifies me anymore. I get excited. I get nervous. I get nervous for competition, but that's the butterflies in the stomach, all that sort of stuff. It's completely natural. And I've learned how to make them fly in formation anyway. So it doesn't matter.
That's great. Even like John Jones was talking about it, he's talking about how he still feels the butterflies.
Yeah.
I think that's perfectly normal. Some fighters say they don't feel it at all. And I always worry about that because I mean, look, everybody's wired differently for sure. But I think it's totally healthy if you have at least one part of you that's like giving you that little that reality check that you're not invincible.
Yeah,
you're not totally. If you didn't have a good training camp and you took time off, let's say like not saying he did this, but let's say the Tyson Fury versus Ngannou boxing match, right? Like he looked like he was out of shape. A lot of people said he was out of shape. And Ngannou like arguably won the fight, and then like now you see him and he was prepared. It looks like he's actually preparing and he's like super lean and all this kind of stuff. I feel like if you don't have that little part of you, even if it's a small part of you, keeping your sort of, whether it's your ego or your confidence in check, saying things could go really badly here. You could lose this match, and maybe not even because the guy's better than you. But maybe because you get injured, you step your knee wrong, or you don't slip out of something when you normally do in training, or whatever it might be. There's still when you're dealing in this type of sort of physical matchup, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. You see people injure themselves, they pop their knee, whatever, like dislocate the shoulder. Things can happen. Like there should be at least one part of you keeping you sort of accountable to the fact that if I don't take this opponent extremely seriously and understand that they trained their ass off because they want to find a way to beat me and they're going to be the ultimate competitor to try and find a way to beat me. And it might be through, it might be through dirty tactics that they're trying to do. You need to be, there's some part of you, I think it's really healthy that there's some part of you that just knows that could go really wrong,
You have to have it. And there's a really good point about being flexible, having flexibility, even within a match or within a training camp or anything like that. If there are chaotic winds going on outside, which is going to survive, the brittle stick on a branch or the blade of grass?
Yeah.
The blade of grass is always going to survive. It is never under a strenuous amount of duress that would make it snap. It's unbreakable.
Yeah.
So the chaotic winds can be present. The fierce competitor coming at you head first can be present. The errors on the team that you're a part of can be present, or the injury threat or something like that could be present. But you're a blade of grass in the wind. You're molding yourself with it. You're flexing with it. You're allowing it to become part of the experience that you're going on. And I share the same philosophy of people that try and block everything out. You can't block everything out because then you'll become rigid. And if you become rigid, you're the stick in the wind.
Yeah, it's a great
analogy. You have to be able to use it to your advantage. So even something very similar as if you're feeling a lot of resistance from somebody and you're trying to negate that resistance, and not be the blade of grass, you're trying to come up against it with a blunt instrument. And that may or may not work. They might have more resistance to give than you've ever experienced. You never know. Someone who's extremely strong comes into the jiu-jitsu gym and you think, oh, I'm going to meet strength with strength. I'm going to meet fire with fire. I'm going to be rigid.
Yeah, the unstoppable object meets the immovable.
Exactly.
Sorry, the unstoppable force meets the immovable object.
Exactly. But in that specific example, what I've learned, especially throughout jiu-jitsu, I had a wrestler come in recently and he was fucking massive. And I knew that I wasn't going to be getting a lot of good play off meeting him with physical attributes. So I allowed him to engage with me thinking that he had the physical advantage. So he was too head fast in pushing forwards. I became flexible and then I threw him with a judo throw, walking backwards. Because I was able to, like the Bruce Lee thing, become like water.
Yeah, be like water.
Exactly. Whatever object you are in, you become that object. And I think it's so important, even for life. You have a business partner that gives you a call and you're like, fuck, maybe we need to change the projections for the things, the tactics that we're using for this quarter. If you're a poor business leader, you'll be saying things like, no, we fucking did this plan. We're going to stick to the plan, blah, blah, blah. Versus the other person who's the blade of grass goes, no, you're right. There might be some room for pivoting here. We're not necessarily going to change it all and tear it all down, but there's some level of application that we can manipulate to be able to gain access to better results.
Yeah.
And you see this with companies during COVID. Those companies that refuse to change, they died.
The end of them.
Peloton is a good example for the inverse. They fucking killed it during COVID. Those at-home bikes with the studios on them, with the fucking screens. Yeah. Guess what they didn't do? They didn't realize that the only reason they were successful was because of lockdowns, because people were stuck inside their houses. They didn't pivot. They were the stick. They're like, this is going to continue forever. We're a multi-$100 million company. It's unreasonable to expect that a 9-figure company would fall apart. But they did, because they weren't pivoting. They weren't a blade of grass.
I think they also made some terrible publicity moves as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably know the ones I'm talking about. But
yeah, the writing was on the wall.
Yeah, and but yeah, so many businesses went under, and so many businesses sort of didn't adopt the technology that was there to sort of help them at those times, and just thought, oh, if we just just weather the storm. Like, you never should be weathering storms. There's no, like, in business, I don't think there's, you need to be super agile. And if your business is set up in a way that you're not super agile, you got lots of red tape, lots of decision makers, lots of hierarchies, you're putting yourself at severe risk. There really should be good leaders always make they always take really decisive action, but they're also willing to change, to course correct if they find out they're wrong. If the data proves they're wrong and the decision they've made is wrong, they're willing to say, I was wrong about that. We're now going to do it this way. Let's move in this direction. Sometimes what happens is people take decisive action and then they let their ego get in the way because they want to be right. It's like, do you want to be, I was talking to a guest the other day, and he said, a business coach said to him, do you want to be right or do you want to be successful? And it's so true. It's like, do you want to be right or do you want to be successful? And there's another saying that I think is very relevant. It's like, strong opinions held very lightly. So, it's really good to have your own opinion about something or take a decision, or, sometimes people looking at the data and it's not conclusive or whatever, and they have a gut feel that this is the right decision. Go with it. But also be prepared to go, you know what? I made that call. It was the wrong call. And the only thing worse than being wrong is staying wrong. That's how I like to look at things. Is like, and this is kind of a good segue, because in jiu-jitsu, like, I think jiu-jitsu is kind of the sport where people are still figuring out how to monetize it. It's still like an emerging, as a business opportunity, it's still emerging. Like, it's not like the NRL or the AFL or, the WWE.
There's no salaries.
Right? There's no salary. And, it probably doesn't have the eyeballs yet of some of these, well, not probably, it definitely doesn't have the eyeballs yet. It is sort of a niche, and there's people that it doesn't have the same appeal to the average punter than the appeal it has to somebody who's training jiu-jitsu. But I think it seems to be growing. And when I first went to, a jiu-jitsu event, it was almost all people who just trained.
Yeah.
And then with events like Subversion and stuff, where it's not just in a gymnasium somewhere and there's nothing really to do other than watch jiu-jitsu fights. Here you're starting to see that the guys bring their wives or their girlfriends or a few of their mates who like the UFC, and UFC comes to Australia once a year or something, like it's not that
if you're
common.
lucky.
This is like, almost as good. And like, if you're getting the highest level grapplers and you're listening to and watching some of the UFC competitors where the commentators are walking through what's happening and where someone's lost position or where someone's gained position. I think over time people become more educated. In the UFC, everyone just wants to see the stand-up, like they boo when there's grappling sometimes, and I just don't understand that, especially when it's good quality grappling. But when you go to a Subversion event or when you go to like a high-level jiu-jitsu competition, you're actually seeing people who appreciate the art. So it is a smaller, more niche group of fans, but they're very informed. And so I think there's an opportunity for people to monetize it, not just through merch or not just through sponsorships and things like that, but to actually get the athletes paid in some meaningful way. And so, I think great productions help because, more eyeballs on it. And, the guys are doing a great job sort of getting, forgot the platform, but they're streaming it on
Flow Grappling.
Flow Grappling, that's it. Sorry, just slipped my mind there. So that's getting an international audience looking at our Aussie athletes, which might then open up pathways for them to invite you to go and compete against some of the the best guys, where maybe the prize money is a little bit more in these tournaments and things like that, or compete on UFC Fight Pass, and then you get all these sponsorship deals and all these things. So like, I'm really excited for it. I think we're still very early, but it seems like a few people like yourself have managed to turn this sort of this attention and you called it notoriety, like you said, notoriety. You're turning it into attention from people who want to pay for your courses and coaching and learn from you. Like, how the hell did you do this? Like, how did you get a blue belt in 7 months? Like, I can't tell you how crazy that is. Like, it's so insane. And then, like, what are the things that you follow? Because you spoke about the iceberg before, and what I thought you were referring to is like, people look at the outcome and go, oh wow, he's a champion, he's this, he's that, but they don't see all of the hard work that you're putting in. Like, I'll tell you, at one point I was training 5 days a week. My body was so wrecked. I'm still a young guy. At the time I would have been 27. Training 5 days a week, one time a day. But I reckon I was spending 3 days a week at physio, sauna, massage, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, cryotherapy, just to deal with the So to do that and go for a run 5 days a week, that's one thing. Jiu-jitsu can be really tough on the body, and it's a very, very physical sport. But also, you're talking about people trying to choke you, trying to break your arms, trying to rip your shoulders, trying to destroy your knees with heel hooks or whatever. Like, it is a lot for the body. So like, how do you deal with all of that stuff? Like,
it's a good question. 13 years of weightlifting certainly fucking helps. My body is very structurally resilient. I was fortunate enough only to have 2 major injuries in a rugby league career, neither of which were anything above the ankle, which is pretty unheard of. No shoulder injuries, no elbow injuries, no knee injuries, no hips, no back, no nothing like that. So I was pretty good, and I was extremely structurally resilient within rugby league too. I was 18 years of age, deadlifting 250 kilos. So my body could handle it. My body could definitely handle it. But so I do 15 sessions a week of jiu-jitsu, roughly. 14 sessions of jiu-jitsu a week, and then 1 wrestling session. The key component that a lot of people miss out on isn't just the physical recovery of getting 8 to 9 hours sleep every night. It's not the supplementation. It's not the food. It's not the hydration. It's not any of that stuff. It's your ability to transcend the physicality by using this. That's the most important part. And I have happened upon this, not too recently, but in recent times. And it's more about my ability to be precise than it is anything else. So I'm going through checklists in my mind of rounds where the techniques flow pretty unconsciously. I'm not sitting there going, that looks like an armbar to me, I'm going to take that. I'm sitting there going, how much energy is that going to cost me versus how much is it going to display onto them? Like how fatigued are they going to get versus my output?
Yeah.
What's the equation there? And am I taking note of little bits and pieces, little cracks in their armor? Am I taking note of their breathing pattern? Am I taking note of how they're blinking? Because you could take somebody down with their eyes closed between blinks. And if you really hone in on it, you'll see it. It's not even the speed. It's what you're doing while their eyes are closed. So I could take a grip and you don't even know that I've taken it because you can't see me do it because it's in between one of your patterns that you don't even know you have. So I'm measuring things like breathing patterns. If they go from to I'm going, because I know their sympathetic nervous system is on overdrive and they're about to have a massive adrenaline spike, which if I weather the storm will fatigue them. Absolutely. Yeah, wow. So if you start to look at it, I'm now looking at things like this. I'm not looking at things of how much strength can I use? How much speed can I use? It's all mental games. It's all psychological destruction. And if you asked somebody from the outside looking in, they would say things, stupid things like bigger, stronger, faster, more steroids, whatever. Okay, fair enough. Why don't you go do those things and then we'll have a match.
That's right. There's more to it than that.
Exactly. But on the inside looking out of what I've just described, now you're starting to see the elements. Like if I started a move, we were talking about this before we started, but somebody would get arm dragged if they were a novice.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even know that you controlling their wrist is a problem because they go, oh, it's a wrist. It doesn't hurt. But then a wrist and an elbow, they still don't flag that in their brain as a problem. Wrist, elbow, you're behind them. Oh my God, it's too late. I'm freaking out. Yeah. Whereas I've developed myself to start to think in a very specific manner that even the manner of which I grip the wrist with how much force and what placement, how far away is it from the body? Is it turned down? Is it turned upwards? Is it towards their chest? Is it away from their chest? All that analytical data starts to come into mind where if I see your arm in a particular fashion, I go through 30 different points of understanding and then go for the technique, knowing that it's the perfect answer to the question that you're presenting me. So all of this pretty much negates physicality. So at the end of a jiu-jitsu session, I'm not fatigued. I'm not sore. I don't really have that experience anymore. When I first started, I hadn't had all that information. So I had no idea what I was looking at. So I didn't realize that wrist meant elbow, elbow meant drag. I was behind, someone was behind me, and now I'm freaking out. And that goes through
every single white belt that competes
death
in
grips.
Competition. Yeah, they come back and their forearms are just locked up in cramp, and it's because they're just holding on so tight and so much adrenaline is pumping through.
Well, they're trying to negate every opportunity of movement, which is the stick.
Yeah.
So you're going to get broken by your own devices. Yeah. Whereas I don't want you to not move. I want you to move in a very particular way that I show you a very small window of opportunity so that I can capitalize.
Yeah.
And I actually use less energy than this. I got a really good training partner. He actually trains out at Smeaton Grange. Oh, yeah. He owns Triple X Fight Academy. His name's Nathan.
Okay.
And he has kind of gone the way of the dinosaur. He's very like strong and tough, and his grips are unreal, especially for no-gi. But that gets him in a lot of trouble with me because I don't freak out when somebody grabs my wrist. I don't need to because I know it's not in a position of danger. Whereas one of the other guys in our training room also uses the same methodology. So when someone grabs their wrist, they understand the danger that they present an opponent. So they're now perceiving that same danger. They're freaking out to the level of what the opponent would be if they took the same grip on them and vice versa. But once you get to a certain stage like Isaac Michel, phenomenal in his own right. We're asking a question yesterday, what happens if you take a 2-on-1 on the arm? He goes, why let it go limp? Well, why? One of the guys asked him and he goes, because it throws you off immediately. I'm not resisting you. You have an upgraded grip on me, an advantageous position on me, and it seems like I don't care. But actually what I'm doing is throwing you off first because it's limp. Second of all, I'm taking the power out of the grip. What do you need for a grip to be effective?
Resistance, yeah.
If I take away the effectiveness of me giving resistance, you now no longer have an advantage. And what that does in a cascading format of psychology gets you to understand that even with an advantage, I have the advantage. Now you're fucked. Now it's checkmate.
He's a freak, eh?
Yeah.
He's a freak.
Like I get people in triangles. They are in a triangle because I give it to them. They put me in a triangle and I'm just sitting there singing a song or chewing gum. And they're like, what the fuck? And sometimes this backfires on me because I have training partners that have probably gone down the way of learned helplessness. They're like, there's nothing we can fucking do to this guy. So I'm not even really going to try. So some of them I have to coax into getting closer and closer and closer and closer to a finish so that they actually spark up that motivation a little bit again.
Yeah.
But eventually that's the goal. Like when most people try and face Gordon Ryan, they already go the way of learned helplessness because they're like, what the fuck are you going to do to this guy? And it's nothing to do with the physicality because he's notoriously slow. He's notoriously unathletic, not super flexible, not super strong. Most of the guys that verse him won't say that he's stronger than X, Y, Z. They'll say he's heavy, like a wet blanket, but they won't say he's like overpoweringly strong.
Yeah.
Whereas if they were to verse Nick Rodriguez, it would be unbelievably fast,
Athletic,
powerful, athlete, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And you think about it, you're like, okay, well then what makes him so good? It's the same process that I just explained, is that he knows 100 iterations of the thing that you're going to do. So that he knows if you go down A and then A2 and then Z6, there's a whole gap in between those sequences. But he can get you at any single one of those. Versus the example of the beginner that doesn't know that wrist means elbow means drag. He knows that the exact same thing that I just explained. There's so many nuances and iterations and other bits and pieces that you're not playing the same game as we are. Because you're unaware to the things you're unaware of, which is the beauty of the sport.
It is like, you get people that start playing chess, right? And they think they get good after 10 matches. And then you get like a chess grandmaster or something like that, and it's just like, it doesn't matter who you are, like you're fucked. Like, unless you're another chess grandmaster. And that's kind of like how the belt grading system works. Like there is variation between gyms.
Of course.
Like, there's social gyms, don't really compete, like, and with respect to them, because they have their place too, right? Not everyone wants to be a professional athlete. Not everyone wants to train 3 or 4 days a week. Not everyone wants to do things that are super hard on the body. They're happy doing a bit of drilling, a bit of sparring, a bit of self-defense stuff. But then, there are some gyms that are a little heavy on wrestling, and the physicality is just so much more. But your point about what we were saying about the arm drag is, there's so many people that don't understand, how different it is if you're a trained fighter or you're trained in jiu-jitsu or even wrestling for that matter. Blokes just have this inherent thought process that they can fight. I see it all the time. Some of the biggest guys, like even my younger brother's like jacked bloke, right?
Yeah.
He's very, very strong. He was always more athletic than I. He's a very strong guy. And if he did jiu-jitsu, I'd be pretty screwed, as would a lot of people.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. So anytime I've had an opportunity, the first time we rolled, he didn't believe that like I could fuck him up, because, and I think I was still a white belt. I was probably like 12 months in, couple of stripes, something like that. I made him tap due to exhaustion. I said, I'm just going to drown you. And I literally just drowned him. So many opportunities to submit him. He threw up, I'm not stitching him out. He's going to hate me for this. But, that's my brother. He's bigger, stronger, faster, all those things, but he's not trained, and so there's other people that say things like, oh, I reckon I could give you a good run. And, but like someone was saying, I can't remember who it was. It might be Hickson Gracie once said that like, a true mark of a blue belt is that they could take, a man of any size really and control them. And that's like, I kind of see that as being pretty true. Like you can take an uninitiated, untrained big dude, it's muscly. It's like that. For example, Mighty Mouse versus that. What's that? 260. I'm 260, bro. Like that.
Yeah, Brad Martin.
Brad, that's it. And recently Mighty Mouse came up against that brown belt. That's
on the weekend.
He's a brown belt, so he's equal skill to Mighty Mouse. but he's also 260, and Mighty Mouse still beat him. So there's levels even when you're brown belt, and that's why I raised that before. But when people haven't trained at all, but because they're a little bit good at whatever sport, they were, I did a bit of boxing, I did a bit of wrestling or whatever. It's like, cool. And every now and again they'll try and grab you, and like, it's like you grab the wrist and you just know that like in 3 seconds I'm going to have you back. And in maybe 15 more seconds I'm going to block, drop, roll. Now you're in an even worse position because I've got both hooks in, my arms under your neck. And it's like, in 15 seconds, it can be all over, like from start to finish.
Yeah.
But they don't understand that. And what they actually need to do is go to a gym at least once in their life and roll with a 60 kilo.
Figure out how helpless you are.
Yeah. Go and roll with a blue belt or a purple belt, 60 kilo or less girl, and watch how helpless you are.
Yeah.
And, it's a very humbling experience. And when I go to train, I hate when I go there and train and I don't get bashed.
Yeah.
It's the greatest feeling ever, getting absolutely humbled, starting your day.
Yeah.
Like just getting belted by, angry purple belts or brown belts or whatever, or even worse, the coach decides he wants to have a roll,
Fortunately for me, that's not a experience that I come up against anymore.
Yeah.
And Luke doesn't roll with me anymore. He goes, what the fuck do I do to you? He goes, we taught you too much. Yeah. It was actually a story when I first started at the gym. There was a group chat that I wasn't a part of because I just started. And there was a big blue belt there named Billy. Billy's big arms Billy, like 20-inch cannons, doesn't even lift weights. Just some fucking Samoan freak. And he sent a message to the group chat. He sent me this screenshot a year after. So he's held on to this the entire time. Billy's a legend. And he goes, who the fuck is that white belt who deadlifted me with a Kimura this morning? He goes, that gun is a freak. Where did he come from? And underneath, one of the purple belts, who's one of those guys that's just tough as fucking nails, trains once a month now, but like can still put it on you, and will definitely put it on the blue belts and the white belts. Just tough as shit. Yeah. And his name's Jason. And he said, don't worry, we're about to give him his blue belt. For 6 months, we'll leg lock the fuck out of him, and then it'll be back to normal. And that's exactly what happened. I remember going to the gym and I would get heel hooked, like 5 or 6 or 7 times a session. And that would be because I was untouchable as a white belt. I was so naive. I was playing a different game than they were.
Yeah.
And
it is different as soon as you add...
Hugely different. Yeah. Why would you ignore 50% of the body? It's fucking completely stupid. So I was smashing these guys as a white belt. And then I got thrown in the shark tank. And then I didn't realize. Then fucking Baby Dave, the guy who is about to be on Subversion in a couple of weeks, would absolutely destroy me by taking my legs apart. And for reference, to paint a picture, I'm 116 kilos and 6'4". This little shit is 72 kilos and 5'9" at least.
Yeah.
At max.
Yeah.
I could kill him if I just grabbed his head. Yeah. And he was smashing me in rounds 2 or 3 times. And it takes a certain type of person to want to look at that and go, fucking oath, give me more.
Yeah.
And I think that really, at least in the beginning, it delineates people who are going to be very good at the sport and people who are going to be very poor. Because the majority of the things that I face coming up against teaching students now is that what you were talking about with business, your ability to let go of old beliefs, especially when you're staying wrong. Yeah. Most guys believe that deep half is the way to the future. It fucking isn't. It's not. Sitting underneath someone, just hugging on, just stopping them from doing things isn't progress. Allowing them to do what they were going to do anyway and then capitalizing on their mistakes, that's progress. Negating parts of the round isn't progress. Sitting there and stalling and trying to throw hands away and just not letting them touch you and doing all those sorts of things, that's not progress. Real progress is when you go into the fire and then you beat them at their game. That's the different evolution of how I think about it. And then it becomes so much more fascinating. Like I've now gone from a position, me and Dave don't roll anymore either because like I said, he's 72 odd kilos and whatever else. It's actually a shame because me and him are the guys who do the most sessions at the gym. So we're on the mats every day together, but the size disparity just doesn't make sense. Even he's learnt. He goes, what the fuck am I going to do to you? But I went from being smashed by him 2, 3, 5 times around to eventually at purple belt heel hooking him.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. And that's where you really...
And when you put yourself in the fire, you actually learn the technique a lot
Exactly.
better, because one of the best ways to learn a technique is to learn how to defend against the technique.
Exactly.
And
it's a reverse engineering process.
Exactly right. And that's the truth for a lot of things in life. It doesn't matter if it's jiu-jitsu or not.
And your ability to cop that without getting disheartened, being the blade of grass, without letting it bruise your ego, without letting it unmotivate you, and just continuing to pursue forwards. Like, how many mistakes have you made in business?
Oh,
probably all of them, and then twice over.
Yeah. All of them.
All of them, right?
Yeah.
If you were a lesser individual who were less driven, less motivated, less focused on an overarching goal of providing for the family and doing those sorts of things, you would have given up a long time ago. But
for sure. Back to being an employee, it'd be much simpler.
Exactly right. But would it? This is the question that I pose to people. But would it?
You know my point, right?
Yeah, of course.
I would never do that.
But this is Troy, right?
Yeah.
That's why no one will remember your name.
Yeah.
That's Troy. He's like, oh, I don't want to fight that man. He's the biggest man I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, to this day, that's the only part of the movie I've seen.
Really?
I've never seen the movie. I only know the quote.
I started rewatching all these old sort of, stories about Achilles and...
They're great.
Alex the Great.
They're great.
And... Yeah, even Gladiator recently, because I've been doing heaps of traveling for work, and so like I'm running out of, because most of the planes don't have internet.
Yeah,
you would think they have internet these days, but most of them,
yeah,
they'll tell you it's not working or whatever. So like you always got to have a few movies ready on the iPad, and Gladiator, Troy, like all these, they're just great. There's so much knowledge and wisdom in there.
Yeah,
and some of these men like are just. Obviously, they're cut from a different cloth to a lot of the men these days, right? Very, very different to...
Alexander the Great was 21 when he like pretty much conquered the known world.
Yeah.
And kids that are 22 these days can't even accept that their fucking latte's 3 degrees off.
Yeah, I love that you raised coffee, because a lot of people... it's almost an ick for me if someone's coffee is like more than 2 words. You know what I mean? Like if you can't convey how you want your coffee in less than 2 words, like what's this? I want to know, what's this 3/4 full shit? Like I haven't heard this until recently.
So I used to be a barista.
Okay.
In Redfern when I was playing for Souths.
And let me apologize quickly if you're offended by. I don't give a fuck. Good. I hope you are. I hope you consider your life choices. I hope it makes you feel bad. I don't apologize for whatsoever. Yeah. So the 3/4 full people, I would always question them too. I'm like, what's the go? They're like, oh, I just don't like that much milk. And I'm like, well, why don't you get a fucking macchiato then? They go, well, it's not enough milk. And I'm like, there's no pleasing you. What the fuck's going on? I understand the people that are like, I want it extra hot because if they're taking it at a takeaway and they're going like 20 minutes on the bus or something like that. Yeah.
Like, okay, fair enough. There's some practicality to that.
Yeah, that's understandable because like also sometimes people give you coffee and it's fucking cold.
Exactly.
It's not nice when it's lukewarm. Like you either want an iced coffee or you want a hot one. Like
there should be no between.
There shouldn't be one in between.
There should be no between.
I get that, but that's really like... Yeah, extra hot is kind of that's probably one I'm okay with, but
it makes sense.
Yeah,
but then with all the syrups and everything else, and they want it half this, half that. They want it lactose-free milk and whatever else. You're like, fuck, can't just give it a rest. I actually questioned one guy once, and I said, "Who told you to order this?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "This is a joke, right?" Because it was like the 3/4 full. It was like soy milk. It was half vanilla syrup, half caramel, and I'm like, can you just explain to me the journey that you went on to decide that this was the hill that you were going to go with? Like, how did you get here? Somebody would have had to give you this for you to recognize that that was what it was. And I just thought of it. I was like, I'm never going to stand, so I'm just going to stop. Yeah. I'm just going to stop. I just got to go into military mode and just make the fucking order and don't worry about it. I was being the stick at that stage. I was being the stick because I'm like, that's wrong. You fucking shouldn't be ordering that.
You should be ashamed of your life.
You should be ashamed.
But yeah, there's a lot of times I think about when people order coffee and I'm just like, you know, you could make it easier, you know, or you could make it easier for yourself and for the barista. And then if it's wrong, it's like, well, yeah, you just gave them like an essay of the coffee that you wanted to make it. Just make it yourself if you care about it that much, you know, like if you if you're that into it and it has to be degree accurate, you probably don't want the $13 to $17 an hour barista who probably hates their job.
They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care. They're saving up to buy some Nikes that's going to take them 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's like, they don't give a fuck about you. They just don't care. And then you're right. There's bigger problems.
Yeah.
There really is. There's bigger problems. And I think that the thematic lesson of this conversation is don't be the stick.
Yeah.
Don't be so controlling over every single nitty gritty detail, because the fact of the matter is we don't control shit.
I know.
We think we do.
Yeah.
We think we do a really good job of controlling business outcomes. And yes, of course, inputs do actually directly match outputs. But the degree of the output, no one fucking knows. I don't know if my next business adventure is going to flunk or it's going to go sky high 10x that I've ever done. I'm willing to take a swing and find out. I'm willing to step up to the plate and find out, but I never know. I never know if I never know if my next 17 jiu-jitsu fights are going to end up in me getting utterly fucking destroyed. I don't know, but it's part of why I want to play the game, because I want to prove that that's not going to happen. And if it does happen, I can't control that. Yeah. So what am I going to do about it? I'm going to go back to being the blade of grass. What can I learn from this? What can I take from this? What am I able to emulate as a result of what they did to me is what I would like to do to them. And then you go down this cascading self-discovery experience. That's why I think jiu-jitsu speaks to people so much, is because you're finding out more of who you are through this mechanism of sport. And business is the best self-development tool of all time, because you will be absolutely tested in every single facet you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
You think you've got a handle on the kettle of rage? Wait till a fucking business blows up in your face. Yeah. Then you're going to find out how much of a handle you don't have. Yeah. You think you're calm. All right, I let people cut me off in traffic. I don't say a word. Okay, that's like level 1. Wait till you get to level 5 where an employee leaves you and steals all your customers. Then what are you going to do about it? And this is like this cosmic game that I like to see existence as, really. And I think there's no way to win. There's no wins and losers. There's only how much of yourself do you actually discover and bring to light. And you really get a sense of this when you meet these charismatic, interesting individuals. I'm sure you meet plenty of them on the show. I got a couple of mates of mine in like a close circle, and you meet these people, and it's not because they're particularly great at one thing. It's because they've trudged through shit and come out the other side.
They didn't get lucky their first time.
You have to learn about yourself. You have to learn visceral lessons and then apply those lessons. You can't just learn the lesson and go, not going to do anything about it, because then you'll learn it again and again and again. And a really good martial arts philosophy is the way that I'm governing my training currently is, imagine if you could only make one mistake once. What would your progress be like? You didn't have to go through the 17th time of going through the same thing and sitting there with frustration. You're like,
that's too close to home, bro.
Yeah. Well, everybody has personal experience with this, obviously, but I really
Coach will be like, no, don't do that. That's not how you do that. And then you just like in this heat of the battle, you sweat, you fatigue.
You're like, hey, bro, I'm doing arithmetic at work right now. Like, I'm not even in this round. What are you talking about? My best recommendation, my best representation of that is my earlier life when I first got my license, and I ended up losing it for 52 months. It was meant to be 12 years. And fortunately, I picked a time to exist that would perfectly coincide with me being around when they redacted those habitual traffic offenders that you used to get. There were 5 years added to any suspension by the RMS on top of what the government gave you. So it's a huge fuck around. So technically I only got 2 years off the road, but then they gave me 2 5-year suspensions on top of that. They're like, we're banning you as being an RMS customer for 5 years and you get 2. And I'm like, what the fuck is this about? This is crazy. And the life lesson was that I just thought that I was invincible as an 18-year-old, as every 18-year-old male does. And I thought, well, I have the physical capabilities of driving, so therefore I can drive. Don't have to worry about rego, don't have to worry about suspended license, this, how drunk am I, that, all that sort of stuff. And those lessons, I had to learn about 6 of them until I was this close to going to jail. And then I finally curbed my attitude. Now, having the ethos of imagine if you could only learn one mistake once and then you could be better for it. Maybe that's not meant to be that way anyway. It's a nice understanding. It's a nice game to play in your mind. But I needed those 6 lessons to get severely and incrementally more drastic and more close to severe consequences because it wasn't sinking in the immediate stages. So you got to learn those lessons and take them on board.
They actually say that's how you get the most change. I've done a lot of like leadership and sort of management training in my time, and when you have people that are just they want to do it their way, whatever. There's some techniques that are shown to work where you let them fail and you let them fail really bad, not to the point of the destruction of your business, but to the point where they feel like, maybe they're going to lose their job, that level, and you use that state of mind that they get into to explain to them, this is why I've asked you to do it this way. And that shock is usually enough to sort of influence their behaviors moving forward. But you really need to get to the point where that you almost not rock bottom, because rock bottom, I don't know, it's a concept that I'm still struggling to get my head around. Like what rock bottom means, because like to me, it means you can't see a way out, it's almost, there's no coming back from this. But hitting a low point, right, in your career, and you're like, oh, fuck, I might lose my job here. How am I going to pay for my mortgage? How am I going to pay for my car? How am I going to like all these things? I can't, whatever, rent, doesn't matter. So when you hit that point, you go, okay, now I need to be different. Now I need to go from being on this autopilot, unconscious sort of autopilot mode to I'm actually going to think really hard about the decisions I make when it comes to my job, because this is very important to me, and I got this close last time, and now, I can't afford to lose this job. It's a great job, the person I work for is great, the team's great. It's 5 minutes from home. The next best competitor is 50 minutes from home. Like, I actually really do have a good here.
Yeah.
I need to stop taking it for granted. Sometimes it needs the shock, which is, I think, probably an example you used with yourself is like, shit, I might actually go to fucking jail if I don't change my behavior.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
There was a string of things that were really important. There was a lot of things where I was forcing myself into a position to get public transport everywhere, which fucking sucks, a massive pile of dicks. And I was going...
I hate public transport so much, man.
It's the worst.
It.
So I was living half at my ex-missus' house in Carlingford, half in the Central Coast, going to Redfern from both of these places. Meaning that if I wanted to start work at 6:30, which I was requested to do, I was getting up anywhere between 5 and 4:30 in the morning. I wouldn't get home from training until 10:30. So the consequences of my actions and my decisions was now impacting my ability to pursue a dream because I wasn't getting sufficient sleep. I had to work, I had to train, and I couldn't get at home or to work any faster than what the public system would allow. There were times I had to eat shit where buses just didn't rock up. They just never came. I was there waiting at 4:48 on the dot. I was there 5 minutes early and I checked the time, I checked the bus schedule, everything like that. You refresh the tab on your phone and it just, boop, 30-minute wait. You're like, are you fucking kidding? What are you talking about? This is all a beautiful lesson in having an awareness of not only in your present tense actions, but also this thing that I like to call future casting. Is like, where are these current behaviors and current habits going to land me in 10, 15, 20 years? I'm sure you guys do forward prospecting with financial clients. You're like, listen, bro, I see 250 come out of the account every Friday night. Where's this going to land you in 10 years? What are we doing? It's a multifactorial question. If you play along with me, you're like, what are you doing here? Versus the other client who is saving that amount of money on a Friday, and you can future cast that and say, hey, in 30 years, like, you're going to have a substantial house deposit if you want to start to allocate that to this and that, blah, 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 blah. And I think it's having awareness in the present for not reaching for the lolly bag at Woolworths when you're hungry, when you're shopping. Because if you did think about your present awareness, you wouldn't go to the shops hungry because you win the battle where it's won. It's an old personal training client thing I used to say. Nobody has the willpower, very few people have the willpower to sit and look at a thing of Tim Tams in the fridge and go, nah, not going to have one.
Yeah, just don't have it in the fridge.
Don't have it in the fridge.
Yeah, it's
don't go to the shops hungry. Don't put it in the trolley. Very simple. Yeah. So you think about it, you become aware and you go, okay, I'm going to win the battle where it's won. where do I win the battle where it's won in regards to jiu-jitsu? I train as much as I physically am capable of training without limiting the quality of the sessions. I could add another 2 or 3 sessions a week. I could. My body would be fine, but my mind would be fucking fatigued.
Yeah.
On top of everything that I currently do, my brain would be fatigued. And that's a very dangerous spiral to get into in the monotony and the mundanity of the training. Because if you're not coming up with innovative and creative styles of implementing different things, fact of the matter is there's about 100 moves, give or take, 100 to 200 moves, I haven't counted them specifically, of things that are effective.
Yeah.
Roger Gracie, one of the greatest of all time, is known for his game being very basic.
Yeah.
However, he's using the same 20 moves that everybody else is using, but they are unbelievably complex with their nuance in his ability to match the answer to the question that's being asked of him. Timing, precision, speed of decision making, all these things that come into it. So then his awareness in the training room must have been, if I want to win competitions, I want to be the best ever. What current habits will I need to develop to be able to get me there? Well, I need to have such brutal precision in the element of my training so that I can elicit that under pressure against a very skilled opponent, against somebody who's bigger than me, against somebody who has more momentum than I do, against a crowd that is against me, against in a foreign environment, whether I'm competing in Brazil or the US or Australia or wherever it has to be. So then you can start to play this game like you were alluding to beforehand with reverse engineering process. Yeah. You go, what do I want it to look like?
And my coach Lucas is Brazilian. He was talking about Roger Gracie, saying a lot of people say that when he moved to the UK, he was only coaching white belts there, and that's where he got his skills really, really well honed. He was like teaching the same sort of techniques that you would teach to white belts, but he got so good at that nuance, the little one. We spoke about it before the podcast, but it gets to a point where you're chasing 1% improvements, and then when you go to the upper level of the elite, the most elite people, you start talking about decimal points. 0.1% improvements. Yeah. And it gets harder and harder to make those improvements, to your point. And you made the most profound point about, but the gains that you get from those, if you're able to execute those 0.1%, as hard as they are to improve, the sort of reward you get on the other side. And I think that's a perfect, I was trying to think of an analogy, and I was thinking about it from a business sense, but
I've got one.
Roger Gracie is a great example of that. I mean, that guy's close guard. If you're in Roger Gracie's close guard, you're in so much trouble. Yeah, you're in so much trouble.
Yeah. Jeff Bezos has a good analogy on that. He said, baseball, the maximum amount of runs that you can gain from one home run is 4, because if the bases are loaded. He goes, in business, the maximum amount of runs you can hit is unlimited, but you're probably going to be hitting a lot more balls or attempting to hit a lot more balls. So the maximum amount of points you can accrue for a loaded base could be 1 million. You're never going to know which one it is. Yeah. You're never going to know which ball it is. So essentially the defining rule and the defining system is step up to the plate and just keep swinging. Just keep swinging. Just keep having a crack.
You never know which one's going to be the breakthrough.
I don't know where those minute 1% are. I'm going to find them though. And I don't care if it takes me the next 500 sessions, because if I'm willing to put that on the line to go the next 500 sessions without having one single technical breakthrough, and it happens to be a world title match for ADCC, and I get the first gold medal that Australia's ever seen, don't give a fuck. Don't care.
Yeah, amazing.
It was all worth it. And that's what I say to people. I say, look, I don't know if jiu-jitsu is going to be the next 10 or 30 years. I don't know. I'm willing to give it everything. And we're going to find out what my everything looks like in real time as a process to be able to execute on that level for the longest period, for whatever takes necessary.
Can I ask you, of all the big names out there, we spoke about a couple, Gordon Ryan, Nicky Rod, like all these other guys. There's guys like Bushesha, there's guys like some of the old guys, there's Cyborg, there's so many big names in jiu-jitsu, and some of them don't really compete as much anymore, or maybe not going to be in ADCC. But like, is there, outside of ADCC, is there like a dream matchup, like any name, is there a dream matchup for you that you think you'd love to have an opportunity to go up against them?
I got to beat Penner.
Okay,
I got to have the rematch.
Yeah.
I'm not satisfied with leaving it.
Yeah,
He
okay.
might retire soon. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's been doing it for a very long time.
So he's yeah, I mean, he's phenomenal as well. There's so many really good guys, and when you're at that level, it's like,
Yeah.
it's almost like a bit of scissors paper rock. Like some guys beat others but can't beat this one, and like there's a bit of that sort of
It is, but it depends on how much you're willing to put towards it. You see the cracks in people's approaches when they compete. You see the laziness that they're portraying in elements of their life, where they start to crack and falter, whether that be emotionality, whether it be physicality. Most of the high-level athletes in any sport across the world are going to be big, fast, and strong. It's kind of ridiculous to assume that they won't be. So what separates the very, very, very best from the great? It's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. And when I think about it, I think it is just those tiny little discipline, like tiny little areas where they're a bit more disciplined, and not having any alcohol, not having, not eating that cheat meal, not like, we're talking about like the smallest little changes, but over a year or however long it might take until
Decades.
Decades.
Yeah, it's that multiplied by it, everybody like, oh, the grind set and fucking whatever else. It's true to an extent. It is true. Like Tom Brady was famous for forcing players of his team to go back out on the field when the coaches went home. Why do you think he's the best ever?
Michael Jordan was the same.
Why do you think he's the best ever? It's because he was willing to put in the yards when no one else was going to do it. And that's why
Kobe,
that's why I love this game, because it's one of those things is like, fuck, this is getting pretty hard. And most people stop at that. Most people quit at that. They go, oh, this is getting pretty hard. Like there's a lot of expectations on me now. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of fan base and all that sort of stuff. The harder it gets, the better it gets, because I know no one's going to follow me. Good.
Yeah.
Because you won't fucking come with me.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Make it harder. Make it more difficult. That way
that's the mindset you have to have.
You are prepared for anything. Anything. I don't give a fuck how hard it gets, because I'm just going to keep coming. Regardless. It doesn't matter. And that's the same thing, the way that I apply myself in business. And it's the same thing I apply myself in relationships. You have a fucking difficult conversation with your missus. Kids that are my age are going, I don't like this confrontation. Boom, see you later. They do it all the time. They do it all the time.
Working through it.
What's the difficult thing? Yeah. The difficult thing is seeing their problem through their eyes. That's the difficult thing. Rather than you being fucking audacious and saying, well, it's my way or the highway. You're a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
But that's where people feel fear. They feel hardness. They feel difficulty, and they wilt and they go, no. You want a relationship that's worth it, the 50-year marriage over a lifespan, you're going to go through a lot of shit, which means pursuing difficulty. You want a business that's going to last 40, 50 years, that's going to go to unprecedented heights where you're managing 50 people? Good. Okay. No one's going to follow you because you've gone through difficulties that other people turned away from. You want to be the best ever in a sport? You're going to go through a lot of shit. There's going to be times where you think that it's not going to be worth it. There's going to be times where you have no motivation to go to training. People always ask me, they're like, fuck, you must be raring to go every day. I love what I do. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But some days I can't be fucked going to training.
I love David Goggins' saying, he's like, some days I stare at my shoes for 30 fucking minutes.
Yeah.
Like, man, I feel that so.
It's true.
I feel that so much.
It's true,
Yeah,
but
sometimes it's like that, man.
But it's
sometimes
those people that go, all right, I don't feel like it. It might take me a little bit longer to warm up today. It might take me a little bit more of my resolve, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I had a relationship end of 5 years, February, not last year, year before. And I didn't see it coming. And it was fucking heartbreaking, catastrophic. I went to training the day after. Not only did I know that it was going to help pull me out of that phase, but that I'd already committed to being the best. So it didn't matter what was going on in my personal life. And a couple of people picked up that I was like not my usual jovial self. But my coach pulled me aside and he goes, "This is fucking impressive." He goes, "Because anybody else would not be here." And he goes, "There's been people that have got a flat tire and not shown up to training." I literally wrote my old car off, 4-car pile up on the M4, and I got the towie to drop me to training and take my car home. I was late, but I was not missing the fucking session.
Yeah.
It was not.
I have an almost identical story to that.
It was not even a reality.
I never wanted to do it, professionally. I admire people who are doing it professionally. I think like there was a session where I lost a tire in the Lane Cove Tunnel. The gym's in Artarmon. Anyway, so I lost the tire in the Lane Cove Tunnel, and I drove basically on the rim to the tire shop, dropped off the car, caught an Uber from the tire shop to the gym. I was like 5 minutes late, and I don't like being late. I think it's sort of disrespectful to the class and the coach. So I showed the coach. He's like, "You're a nut job for actually coming to the training." Anyone else would say, "Oh, I got a sore arm, I got a sore neck." Even when I was injured, I had a pretty bad elbow. There was sort of a guy that was visiting the gym, and he was just like, just beating people up, and I tapped, but he didn't let go. So I had a pretty jacked elbow for a while, but I'd go to every session that I would normally be scheduled to go to, and I would just sit because jiu-jitsu is a unique sport. It is a class format usually, unless you're doing privates, but you can still learn. You can just watch. You don't have to spar, and if there were things that I could do that wouldn't involve, both arms or whatever, then I would try and do them. I'll do the best that I could, but everybody instead will just make excuses, and even your own mind makes excuses for you. Sometimes when I wake up, that's why I stare at my shoes for 30 minutes. Some days I wake up for training and, my body plays tricks on me. Oh, you've got a sore neck. You don't worry about training. Oh, you need the sleep. You've had a rough week or whatever. Like your body just plays so much tricks on you. And it's just your mind. Sorry, it's not your body. It's your mind plays so much tricks on you. But once you actually get up out of bed, you brush your teeth and you get ready, you get to training. I've never once regretted going to training. I've never once regretted it. And I've always said, like, every time you do let that little mind game, every time you lose that or you give up and you miss the session for whatever reason, you actually get one step closer to quitting.
You're building the skill of failure.
Yeah.
You're building the skill of wilting under pressure. And the important thing that you're speaking to there is that nobody's going to notice if you don't rock up on Monday morning. The coach maybe will notice, the teammates maybe,
but you
do that for 6 weeks. No one's going to, who the fuck is that guy again?
Yeah.
But you will notice.
Yeah.
You're the one that's going to know. And if you said you were going to do it, and if you don't do it, to your point exactly, you're whittling away that willpower or force or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But now you have an inability to apply that in any other facet of your existence because you no longer can trust your own word. So now when you're visualizing things and saying, I want to achieve great things in my life, you can't trust yourself. How are you going to back yourself in those elements? And this is where people think that confidence is this elusive genetic material, or that greatness is the same thing. Most of the athletes we've talked about do not come from great families. They don't come from privileged upbringings. They don't. If that was the case, every single great athlete would come from a rich household.
Yeah.
If that was the case.
Oftentimes it's the opposite, right?
Oftentimes, high-level business owners, the CEO of Starbucks was getting grilled the other day by some senator. And he goes, oh, you want me to spend my money differently because I'm a high net worth individual? That's weird because I come from Section 8 housing. I come from poverty. I come from nothing. He goes, I built this all the way up because I dreamed a better life for me and my family. And now you're going to tell me how to allocate my resources? Go fuck yourself. And the majority of people, they come through that. That's why when you meet these people, they have this character, this resolve, this magnetism towards them. And it's not the achievements that make him interesting. It's where he came from and what he did with the cards that he was played. What the cards where he was dealt to play the hand. It's like any good poker player. They have this complete illusory facade that you have no idea what they're holding, but they have such exuberance, such confidence. And they turn the cards over and the hand means nothing. But they played you like a book because they had such conviction in their own beliefs. And that's essentially the game, right? Like life is going to throw you so many fucking curveballs and ups and downs. And you say you want this thing. Okay. Like you say you want to be a strong, courageous individual. How do you get there? You go through battles that will determine your strength and courage. You say you're loyal, but you've never been given the opportunity to be disloyal.
Yeah.
So how the fuck do I know? You say you're tough, but you've never gone in through anything or pursued anything that would grant you the toughness via its difficulty. How do I know you're tough? I don't. I can't know you're tough. So then now when you say you want to be these things, you say I want to be a strong, capable, confident, competent, intelligent individual. Okay, well, the universe is going to say, all right,
I'll give you opportunities to
we're going to present you with problems and challenges and difficulties and hardships that are going to force those qualities out of you. It's going to fucking suck. It's going to be hard. It's going to be painful. You're going to question why you ever said it in the beginning. Then you'll get to a stage where you go, it's worth it. Then it's game over, because whatever the fuck you throw yourself down into is now finished, because you're going to be willing to eat these fucking piles of shit on the way up the hill, like the Sisyphus story, pushing the stone uphill for eternity. You're doing it for eternity. And this is why I like the concept of the infinite game. Business and relationship and sport and everything else, like living is an infinite game. We have a finite time to play the infinite game, but it's what can I attribute myself that's going to perceptually last forever, thereby destroying any chasing of an outcome.
And look, it's I agree totally, and it can be an infinite game. Like, you know, if you are lucky enough to be blessed and have children, and you pass on those lessons to your children, like how far can you propel your bloodline? You know, like how far it can be an infinite game. You know, ultimately we're a product of our ancestors, so it's an infinite game where you have a contribution for a finite amount of time, but your contributions can be felt generations down the line. So I want to ask sort of one more sort of line of question for the business side of jiu-jitsu, because we sort of touched on it before, but what are you doing yourself? Because I know, like, it's not the sort of the match payments aren't, you know, they're not enough to retire on, let's put it that way. But what's sort of Josh Saunders, the businessman, doing to sort of you know, allow this lifestyle and sort of keep pursuing these dreams of becoming, you know, so one of the best in the world, if not the best. So what are some things that other athletes who maybe are aspiring to go down the same journey, like what are some things that you can...
what you alluded to earlier is like when you actually commit to something, you go all in, people will believe in your ability to get them there more than they will believe themselves to get them there. So there's an element of trust. There's a certain level of expertise that I've demonstrated, not only the way that I've approached things, but the thing that I've achieved, that give people this element of the rub. Like, I want to be around that. And originally I was doing online personal training, and then I got to a stage throughout my career progression in jiu-jitsu where I was asking people where they came from, what they're interested in, what they're doing. And I realized serendipitously they're all blue belts. And I'm like, okay, interesting set of data. And then I said to myself, I'm like, do I really want to be coaching people how to lose weight forever? And I said, no, because it's fucking horrible. It's boring. And they always blame you. They do none of the work. So I went, how am I going to augment this so that every single waking daily thought of me is focused on how do I get better at the sport of jiu-jitsu? And then you alluded to it with Hodger Gracie, started teaching. I'm like, okay, well, I can do the traditional private route where I make a little bit of money per hour. My hourly rate doesn't increase too significantly from personal training. Or I could run a gym. I didn't have the capital to open up a gym. So I'm like, interesting. What am I going to do? Well, I'm pretty good at this online coaching thing. Why don't I just mold that into a jiu-jitsu platform where I do online jiu-jitsu coaching? Why not? Hasn't really been done before in a service base. It's productized where they sell courses and instructionals, but it's not a service-based business. And I'm like, well, I'm running one of those. Why don't I just mold that into jiu-jitsu? So I rang a videographer mate of mine who's a purple belt, and I said, let's do a course on how I went from white to brown belt in 23 months. I think it'd be interesting. People like it. Along this time, I'd met my current partner, Talia, and she was posting on TikTok all the time, and I hadn't gone onto that platform yet because I fucking hated it because it was all Zoomers and idiots and whatever else. And she goes, you should start posting on there because you'll get a wider audience for your platform and it'll help you as an athlete. So I went, all right. And this was shortly after ADCC with the match with Pennine. So I started posting on TikTok, and the first video I posted got 58,000 views in like 2 days.
Wow.
because I said I took down a world champion in less than 2 years of training, which is true. I Uchimated Penna on a world stage, which is not an achievement of any sort in my brain now, but at the time, unheard of. If I removed my subjectivity from the information, holy fuck, that's very strange. How did that happen? And that became the ethos of the entirety of the course. And then I went, well, I don't just want to sell a course, because then there's firstly no recurring revenue, but there's no ability for me to be able to measure progress ongoing for people. And I know the way that I've done $80,000 of online education since I started personal training, different courses and mentorships and other bits and pieces. And I know the statistics on courses. About 98% of people never make it to the third lesson or beyond. It's just a fucking shit attrition rate. Same as gym memberships. 80% of people never show up. They continue paying, but just 80% of people never go. And I'm like, how am I going to change this? So I decided to add a community attached to it, which would be contingent upon them paying a subscription fee, but that would be able to expedite their lack of problem solving in their own gym with limited education, so that I could deliver that to them on a less formal basis, but in like a 24/7 sort of aspect. So I could answer their questions about things that their coaches either didn't know, the coaches didn't give a fuck about them, because that's the gross majority of gyms, unfortunately, in the sport. They see them as a customer. They don't see them as a student. And it's very important to see it the other way around, because if you see them as a student, they'll be a customer forever. And you don't make sales, you don't make customers to get sales, you make sales to get customers. And if you think about it like that, your whole business transforms overnight. There's relational things that you do, not transactional things. Like the guy that just makes your coffee, doesn't give a fuck about what it is, doesn't know your name, doesn't know your business, doesn't know anything. Here's your fucking whatever latte.
Yeah.
I'm not going back to that guy. I'll go back to the guys that I talk shit with, that know my name, that know what I do. They ask me how my missus is.
Order.
Exactly. I don't even fucking need to order it because they're ready to go.
Yeah.
What's the difference? One's transactional, one's relational. And I'm like, I can really make a difference here. So I started doing it. I put the course together, and I ended up going okay in the first couple of months. And I set this big fucking retarded goal of I want 1,000 members. Don't know where it came from. Don't know why. It's a nice round number. So I went for it. And I went through a marketing agency, and they fucking suck balls. They promised me the world and gave me an atlas. They made me do all the content for the website. I'm not a marketing guy. They made me write all the stuff out, and it just sucked. So I was a little bit disheartened, but I was like, no, I think this is going to be a thing. I really do. And I'm retarded enough to not look at any other options. I'm like, I'm going to make this happen. I got to be flexible in my approach of how I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to make this happen. And I've had that happen throughout my career in rugby league, throughout my career in jiu-jitsu, throughout multiple different endeavors. And I'm like, I'm going to make this happen. So then by serendipitous nature, I go into another marketing team who happens to be my only remaining personal training client's best friend, who used to work at Founder, who's generated over $20 million in revenue for courses online. And I'm like, that's interesting. Go through the sales process, meet him, talk to him. He goes, bro, you're going to fucking find this really crazy. But Matt and I stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning to watch you at ADCC. And I'm like, get fucked. Get fucked. And he's like, no, I'm being serious. I was like, all right, well, I don't care how much you charge. I don't care what's involved. We're doing it. And he goes, bro, trust me, the way that your career trajectory is going, the way that jiu-jitsu is going, the way that everything's going upward trends. Yeah. He goes, this is going to be a fucking massive opportunity.
If you could bet on the sport of jiu-jitsu in Australia, like maybe not bet, maybe the better way to do it, if you could invest, if it was a stock, I would be very bullish on it for a number of reasons. But I think like we haven't really had, like jiu-jitsu's always been there. It's been bubbling away in the background. There's gyms popping up and all that kind of stuff. But you know, the rise of like, you know, the Joe Rogan podcast. I mean, that bloke's the number one recruiter to jiu-jitsu gyms. Every jiu-jitsu gym should be paying that bloke royalties. Yeah.
Not that he needs it. But
I know. But, you know, so there's that. But now we're starting to see like some real superstars coming in, like people like Aussies, like, you know, true blue Aussies that are actually making their name on the world stage. Yeah. And like Aussies have such, I mean, personality wise, so much better than the standard American, you know, like the standard American's all the same. It's all like flashy, showboaty stuff. Yeah. Like, there's not a lot of substance to the, you know, whereas Aussies are just like, so chill and relaxed about certain things, but then they'll fuck you up, and they're like, they got a weird haircut, or they got a mullet, or they're, you know what I mean? They're like the John Daly style. Like Craig Jones is just hilarious. You know what I mean? He's talking about, testosterone, and
he goes on about some things.
He goes on.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's funny. It's different. You know, the world hasn't really seen like true Aussies, you know? So I think, not just that, the talent, the gyms, like everything's just getting so much better. The caliber of competitor is just so much better than was even 3 years ago. The production level, like every time I go to the Subversion event, I'm always blown away because they take it to a new level every single year. And I'm so happy to sort of be a part of that and, you know, sort of contribute in a very small way. You know, help the fighters get, you know, some bonuses and just put something that, like, maybe they're not on the main card, but if they're hunting for a fast submission or a really creative submission or an awesome takedown, so that, because what those things will do is they'll actually create fans or make people like, and before I reckon less than a couple of years, that venue will be too small for the amount of people.
Easily.
I reckon that, like, they'll be selling out this year. I reckon next year they'll need a new venue.
Easily.
Or worst case, the year after. And then where to from there? You know, it's exciting. But how do people access the mentorship, the coaching platform?
Just through the website. I'm sure if you've liked anything of jiu-jitsu on the internet, you get in my ads probably.
I get them.
Yeah, just how it works. If you like anything to do with jiu-jitsu, but it's whitetobrownbelt.com. All the social media platforms are HPU Coaching. They're all pretty similar and pretty easy to find. I always have this thing in my mind of like whether I'm doing it wrong, whether I just want to be the guy in the woods that fucking just gaps it and does nothing and just lives in a hill somewhere, or just do the stratospheric thing and just go fucking ridiculous. And it's always a coin flip because there's so many benefits and negatives to both. But in the words of my best mate Zach, who got me into the sport, he goes, "You're the perfect person to have like a stratospheric rise because you won't change. You just be yourself." And I'm not attracted to the trivialities of it all. I'm going to be doing what I'm going to be doing regardless of how many people are watching.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
I think you won't really realize this, but I think there's a lot of people that will, like, you would have impacted and you have no idea.
Yeah.
And that's important too, because unless there's people that can latch on to, you know, not idols, but people that are inspirational. Like, okay, if he did it, then, you know, he did it in that time frame. Like, I'm going to try and do it in that time frame. And they may not achieve that because that's just like your success is
they
crazy.
Probably won't.
Yeah.
But they might achieve some level that is similar in a different field. They might take their relationship from white belt to brown belt. They might take their business from white belt to brown belt. And it doesn't matter about the time. It's what it stands for as human achievement. And the way that it worked was unrelenting will toward a goal. That's all it is. That's the entire summation of what I've done.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And
I love that.
And that is only the tip of the iceberg.
We use the belt system in our office a little bit in terms of marking competence. You know, we use, some people don't get it, so we use, you know, sort of a combination between like a driver's license system where you're a learner, then you're a provisional, then you're a full license, and then when you're sort of unconsciously competent, you're just at that high level. Then you basically got a racing license, you know what I mean? So we use that, but it's the same thing. Like if you're a broker or it doesn't matter what your role is, you should measure yourself in a grading system, and it should be like objective and factual so that you can actually measure your progress. Like what is a black belt in whatever job? It doesn't matter if you're a carpenter or a plumber or it doesn't really matter. Whatever your field of expertise is, you know, what does a black belt plumber do? And I'm not just talking about, you know, on the job, on the tools. How does he run his business? How does he treat his staff? How does he, like, all those things? And then the other end of the spectrum is the apprentice plumber. When he joins, he's a white belt.
Yep.
And I always say that that's the hardest belt to get. And the reason is you give yourself, so many people give themselves so many excuses as to why they don't join
why they don't
start. And statistically speaking, it would be the hardest belt because, like, there's from however many people there are in the world to how many people actually start jiu-jitsu. That's a bigger drop off than however many people are white belts
to blue belt,
black, or even end up all the way down to black belt. You know,
The cool thing is it's the hardest, but it's also the hardest it's ever going to be.
Yeah, which is...
It gets easier every day because you get better.
Yeah. That's actually a great point. Yeah.
It's an inverted principle.
Yeah.
It's a complete reverse engineering of the process.
Yeah,
Your first day in finance
yeah.
was your hardest day because you didn't fucking know anything.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be a challenge. My first time playing chess is going to be the hardest time I ever play it. It won't get easier in the level of difficulty in terms of like the people that I go against or anything like that, but I will be getting better. So for me, when I first started in the gym, 12.5 kilo dumbbells were heavy as fuck. Now I could throw one of them 40 meters.
Yeah.
It still weighs the same, but I got better.
Yeah.
It is perceptually easier. It's still the same difficulty as it was day one, but the perception was changed. So now I think that it's easy, but it's not. I got better.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. It's mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm really grateful.
Thanks for having me.
For you to take time out of your schedule and come and sit here. And yeah, looking forward to watching you on the scene compete and dominate. It's
We'll be here for a long time. We'll be
Yeah.
here for a long time.
You still got plenty of time, and jiu-jitsu is one of those sports where you can actually compete at the highest level for a really long time.
Yeah.
So man, looking forward to cheering you on from the sidelines. It's an absolute pleasure.
Maybe that's in my my cards or whatever the fuck you want to say, or my star sign. Maybe I'm meant to be the oldest competitor ever. I don't know.
Who knows?
I'm going to give it a crack and find out.
I wouldn't want to roll you even when you're 60, bro.
Oh man, you best believe I'll be pulling my kids in line when I'm 60.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure.